History remembers great civilizations for their armies, their kings, their monuments, their wealth, the pyramids of Egypt, the walls of China, the roads of Rome. It became deeply woven into everyday life. Perhaps nowhere is that connection more visible than in one of Ethiopia's most famous foods, Injera, the soft, slightly sour flatbread that has been prepared for generations using fermented teff flour. For many Ethiopian families, Injera is more than a meal. It is tradition. Meals are shared from a single large platter. Family and friends gather around the table. Food becomes an expression of community. And at the center of that tradition is one of the smallest grains on earth. But this raises another mystery. If teff has sustained communities for thousands of years, why hasn't the rest of the world embraced it in the same way? The answer lies not only in history, but inside the grain itself. Because hidden within each tiny seed is a nutritional profile that scientists are still working to fully understand. And what they have discovered may explain why this humble grain has endured for so long. If teff helped sustain generations of farmers, kingdoms, and communities, then one question naturally follows. What makes this tiny grain so different? At first glance, the answer isn't obvious. There are no bright colors, no unusual shape, no sweet aroma. Unlike many modern superfoods, teff doesn't try to impress you. Its greatest strengths are hidden where you can't see them. Inside every tiny grain is a carefully balanced package of nutrients that help people thrive long before nutrition labels or dietary guidelines ever existed. Like many whole grains, teff provides complex carbohydrates, the body's primary source of energy. But unlike refined grains that lose much of their nutritional value during processing, teff is almost always eaten as a whole grain. That means the bran, the germ, and the endosperm remain together. Nothing important is stripped away. This allows teff to retain dietary fiber, which supports digestive health and helps slow the absorption of carbohydrates. That slower release of energy may have been one reason farming communities valued it. A day spent working in the fields demanded food that could provide steady energy rather than a quick burst followed by fatigue. Teff also contains plant-based protein. Although no single plant food provides everything our bodies need in perfect amounts, teff contributes valuable amino acids as part of a balanced diet. When combined with legumes and other traditional foods, it forms a nutritious foundation for everyday meals. Then, there are the minerals: iron, magnesium, calcium, zinc, manganese. Each plays a role in helping the body function normally, from supporting bones and muscles to assisting the production of energy inside our cells. Exactly how much of these minerals the body absorbs can vary depending on how the grain is prepared. And that's where Ethiopian tradition reveals another remarkable insight. For centuries, teff has been fermented before becoming injera. At first, fermentation may have been valued simply because it improved flavor and texture. But modern research suggests it may also help reduce naturally occurring compounds called phytates, which can interfere with the absorption of certain minerals. In other words, a culinary tradition passed down through generations may also improve the body's ability to use some of the nutrients found in the grain. It's a fascinating reminder that traditional food practices often developed through centuries of observation, even when people didn't yet understand the chemistry behind them. Teff has another quality that has attracted global attention. It is naturally gluten-free. For people living with celiac disease or other medically diagnosed conditions requiring a gluten-free diet, this makes teff an important alternative to wheat, barley, and rye. But it's worth being careful here. Being gluten-free does not automatically make a food healthier for everyone. Healthy eating depends on the overall quality and balance of a person's diet, not on a single ingredient. Teff isn't remarkable because it avoids one particular protein. It's remarkable because it delivers a broad range of nutrients while remaining versatile and resilient. As teff began appearing in supermarkets outside Ethiopia, another word started following it everywhere: superfood. It's a powerful marketing term, but it's also one that deserves careful scrutiny. No single food can prevent every illness. No grain can replace regular exercise, adequate sleep, or a varied diet. Teff is no exception. What makes it valuable isn't that it's magical. It's that it combines several beneficial qualities in one remarkably small package. Modern researchers continue to study teff for exactly that reason. Scientists are exploring how its fiber may support digestive health, how its nutrient profile compares with other grains, and how it might contribute to healthy eating patterns. The research is promising, but it is also ongoing. Many questions still require larger and longer clinical studies. Science moves carefully. It builds knowledge one piece at a time. And that careful approach helps separate evidence from enthusiasm. Perhaps the greatest lesson teff teaches us is that extraordinary things don't always arrive with extraordinary appearances. This tiny grain doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't rely on bold claims. For thousands of years, it quietly earned the trust of the people who depended on it every day. That quiet reliability may explain why it has survived while so many ancient crops faded into history. But the story of teff is no longer confined to Ethiopia. Today, farmers, nutritionists, and agricultural scientists around the world are asking a new question. Not how teff helped build a kingdom in the past, but whether it can help feed a changing world in the future. As climates become less predictable and the demand for resilient crops continues to grow, this ancient grain is once again stepping into the spotlight. And its next chapter may prove to be its most important yet. For centuries, teff rarely attracted international attention. It didn't dominate global trade like wheat. It wasn't exported around the world like rice. And it never became a household name like corn. Instead, it remained deeply rooted in the Ethiopian highlands, where generations of farmers continued cultivating it as they always had. To the rest of the world, teff was almost invisible. But that began to change in the late 20th century. As scientists searched for crops capable of meeting the challenges of a changing climate, they started looking beyond the world's most common grains. The question wasn't simply how to grow more food. It was how to grow food more sustainably. Could there be ancient crops that had already adapted to difficult environments? Teff quickly stood out. It grows across a range of elevations. It matures relatively quickly compared with some cereal crops. Once established in suitable conditions, it can perform well even when rainfall is less predictable than farmers would like. While no crop is immune to extreme weather, teff's resilience has made it an important subject of agricultural research. Scientists are studying how its genetics and growing characteristics might contribute to future farming systems. Some researchers hope the lessons learned from teff could help improve other cereal crops as well. Not by replacing wheat or rice entirely, but by expanding the range of crops available to farmers. That diversity matters. History has shown that relying too heavily on a small number of crops can leave food systems vulnerable to disease, pests, and changing climates. The more resilient our agriculture becomes, the better prepared we are for an uncertain future. But teff's importance extends beyond science. It also raises an important question about the way we think about food. Why do some crops become global icons while others remain local treasures? Sometimes the answer has very little to do with nutrition. History, economics, trade, and politics often shape our diets just as much as biology does. Wheat spread alongside expanding empires. Rice became central to civilizations across Asia. Maize transformed agriculture in the Americas. Teff, meanwhile, remained closely connected to the land where it first flourished. Its story reminds us that many remarkable foods never become globally famous. Not because they lack value, but because history takes different paths. Today, however, that path is beginning to change. Interest in ancient grains has grown rapidly. People are becoming more curious about traditional foods and the cultures that preserve them. Researchers continue exploring how diverse grains can contribute to healthier and more resilient food systems. And through it all, Ethiopia remains the heart of Teff's story. For countless families, Teff isn't a trend. It isn't a novelty. It's simply food. The same food that parents prepared for their children. The same grain that sustained villages through difficult seasons. The same ingredient that has brought families together around shared meals for generations. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson Teff offers. The most valuable foods are not always the newest discoveries. Sometimes they've been with us all along, waiting patiently for the rest of the world to notice. When we look back at the opening question, how could the world's smallest grain help build a kingdom? The answer is surprisingly simple. It wasn't because Teff was magical. It wasn't because it produced the biggest harvests or promised miraculous health benefits. It was because it was dependable. It nourished people year after year. It adapted to challenging landscapes. It became woven into culture, tradition, and daily life. Kingdoms are not built by spectacular harvests alone. They are built by consistent harvests, by reliable food, by farmers who know they can plant a crop with confidence. In many ways, Teff represents something larger than itself. It reminds us that resilience is often more valuable than abundance, that small things can have enormous influence, and that history is sometimes written not by the largest armies or the tallest monuments, but by the quiet crops that kept entire civilizations alive. The next time you hear someone mention the world's greatest grains, remember the tiny seed that helped sustain one of Africa's oldest civilizations for thousands of years. Its story is more than the story of a crop. It's the story of human ingenuity, adaptation, and the enduring partnership between people and the plants they cultivate. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history of Teff, there are many more remarkable plants whose stories deserve to be told. From ancient fruits that cross continents to trees that have survived millennia, every plant has a history waiting beneath its leaves. If you're fascinated by the science, history, nutrition, and cultural significance of the world's most extraordinary plants, subscribe and join us for the next journey. Until then, stay curious, because sometimes the smallest things leave the biggest mark on history.